scholarship has examined their exploitation as patients forced to work as surgical assistants. This book, however, shifts the focus to the lack of recognition these women received as nurses, even though nursing was considered a feminine profession in which intelligence and judgment were valued. This book also demonstrates how slavery and racial science were self-contradictory in their assumptions about black people's inferiority. Although historical records list the New York hospital Sims founded in 1855 as the country's first women's hospital, we also know that a decade earlier he had created an Alabama slave hospital for women. During its last 2 years under Sims's leadership, he taught his patients how to assist him during surgeries. Once Sims left the South for New York, he sold his women's hospital to a junior colleague, Nathan Bozeman, Sims's former medical assistant and a fellow slave owner, who continued operating it as a gynecological hospital and treated and experimented on patients from a primarily slave population. Like Sims, Dr. Bozeman later sold the hospital and returned the enslaved patients to their owners. He went on to advance his burgeoning medical career and promote his button suture surgical method, which he touted as more successful than the Sims silk suture method. For pioneering gynecological surgeons, black women remained flesh-and-blood contradictions, vital to their research, yet dispensable once their bodies and labor were no longer required. Neither Sims nor other early American physicians viewed Sims's slave patients as the maternal counterparts to Sims in his role as the father of American gynecology. There was no social or cultural impetus for professional white men heavily invested in their racial, gendered, and slaveholding dominance to do so. To remedy this failure to acknowledge their contribution, this book recognizes the unheralded work of those enslaved women recruited against their will for surgeries and made to work while hospitalized, and the labor of those poor immigrant women who willingly entered crowded hospitals in an effort to be healthy reproductively. Medical bondage is not so much about historical recovery as it is about the holistic retrieval of owned women's lives outside the hospital bed. I place them in the annals of medical history alongside the doctors who performed surgeries on them. Slavery forced sick women to experience their lives in ways unimaginable to other Americans. Slavery created an environment in which black women performed more rigorous labor than white women and some white men. Because the agricultural work that all enslaved people performed was identical, doctors sometimes erased gender distinctions when they assessed the physical strength and health of black women. White people believed that black women could sustain the brutal effects of corporal punishment such as whippings just as black men allegedly could. When these women fell ill, a physical state where most people were allowed to be weak, white society objectified and treated them as stronger medical specimens. As a consequence, enslaved women vacillated between the state of victim and of agent. The historical arc of American gynecology resembles other American histories in that it is triumphant. It is a polyphonic narrative that contains the voices of the elite and the downtrodden, and if studied closely, this history evidences how race, class, and gender influenced seemingly value-neutral fields like medicine. In work such as Charlotte Fett's Working Cures, Marie Jenkins Schwartz's Birthing a Slave, and Deborah Kuhn McGregor's From Midwives to Medicine, enslaved women and Irish immigrant women emerge as historical actors worthy of examination. These scholars have rightly focused on sexual violence, reproduction, and the family, and medical bondage introduces both science and medicine into the discourse. By chronicling the lives of enslaved women, this book demonstrates that slavery, medicine, and science had a synergistic relationship. It departs from the work of Fett, Jenkins Schwartz, and Kuhn McGregor not only because it is a comparative study of black slave women, Irish immigrant women, and white medical men, it also delves deeply into the creation of antebellum-era racial formation theories about blackness, the idea that race was biological and determined one's behavior, character, and culture. Further, my study broadens the work of important historians of medicine like Todd Savitt, who have focused on race and medicine but not examined the central role of slaves in the history of gynecology. Historians of race and medicine have recast different topics, such as antebellum.